Let me leave you with this, Elliot. To Rusty and Beatsy and Singy and Jorgie, Stoney and Frenchie, Bach and Cy and LP, Hawk, Crow and Rock, Woody, Ross the Boss and the Kid, Eli, Gully, Scotty, Charlie and Scoop, the Cat and Marquise, Walk and Mo, El Presidente and Pedro, Cliffy and Rondell, and Orlando and Michael and Brian and Jose and Vladdy. Now, if you know what I'm talking about, you got the picture. A wealth of wonderful memories. And I know that as Expos fans, you won't let go of that.
The mellifluous voice of Dave Van Horne, that audio from the last home game in Expos history where he participated in that broadcast. Dave Van Horne, over 3 decades as the play-by-play voice for the Montreal Expos. And then after he left at Montreal, went to the Miami Marlins, over a couple of decades there. And this week we find out that Dave Van Horne retiring from the baseball broadcast booth. It is my tremendous pleasure to welcome Dave Van Horne onto the show. Dave, thank you so much.
Elias, my pleasure. It's a different kind of a time for me, getting ready for no spring training and no season. So,
yeah.
but I will adjust. I'm comfortable with the decision that I've made, and looking forward to the time ahead.
Before we get to this upcoming spring training and how life will be different, I want to take it back. Did you stumble into this? Did you ever think this was going to be 5+ decades in baseball way back in 1969 with the Expos?
No, as a matter of fact, I was hoping to get through the first year in good shape. In 1969, I remember talking to John McHale about the terms of my employment, and he said at this particular time, this of course was before the ball club had even played a single game, and John said, I'm going to sign you to a 1-year contract, he said, because none of us have any idea where this is all going to go here in Montreal. Of course, I was still thrilled with that, getting the 1-year contract. And, of course, I signed on. At that time, no, I had no idea that some 53 major league seasons later that I would be hanging him up.
You've put it so eloquently, a lifetime of memories. I want to reminisce on those years in Montreal. And what stands out to you still to this day from your time in this city broadcasting baseball?
Well, the body of work, of course, stands out. But from a standpoint of looking at the organization, there I was, a rookie major league broadcaster in 1969, and for the next 8 to 10 years, I watched as John McHale and his baseball people, of course, including Jim Fanning and others, built a wonderful farm system. And it took some time, naturally, to bring everybody together, but when they all came together 10 years later in 1979, that team won 95 games and competed for a division title and postseason play. That was the first time that they had competed like that, but I watched them build that organization, and that was an absolute thrill to be right there and have the seat that I had to witness what was going on behind the scenes and on the field with the Montreal Expos.
You mentioned the body of work. You've had the recognition for that body of work, Baseball Hall of Fame, Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame, etc. You know, Dave, they say that time heals all wounds, and I need to hear it from you. Is that the case with you and the Expos, and, you know, how it just didn't go the way a lot of Expos fans wanted to go with the team leaving?
Well, no, it didn't. I mean, the 2000 season was my last season, and we weren't even on the radio that season. I did all of the games on the internet because they couldn't come to an agreement. The Loria Sampson organization couldn't come to an agreement with anybody to broadcast the games on standard radio. So that was a huge disappointment. But there were other disappointments along the way, even going back to the late 80s when the initial owner, Charles Bronfman, put the team up for sale and virtually had no takers. Had to put together a consortium of ownership. That didn't work out all that well, but nonetheless, they were able to keep the team in Montreal. It was a disappointing situation at the time. I really thought that if Charles put the club up for sale, that there would be a lineup of people looking to buy that franchise, and there wasn't. So that was a big disappointment. And just like the fans, there were other disappointments along the way. Certainly 1981 and Blue Monday, the fact that the rug got pulled out from under the ball club and baseball, period, in 1994. There were disappointments along the way. But by and large, the 32 years that I spent there were just terrific. And if I could change a few things, it would be the things that I just mentioned. But I had no power to change that.
Yeah.
I was just a witness to what was going on.
We're with Dave Van Horne, a legendary former Expos play-by-play voice, over 5 decades broadcasting baseball. He's retiring from that line of work. Now, Dave, in 2009, I actually organized a sports journalism conference when I was working at Concordia, and I had you back into town in 2009 to participate at that conference. I still think about that conference, and you were there, and Michael Barrett was there. I had dinner with Michael Barrett just last month or 2 months ago in December. I had dinner with Michael Barrett when he came into town for an event, and it's just incredible, just the Expos nation, for lack of a better term, and how that group still is so close-knit. I know that for family reasons, you still have connections with Montreal. Tell me about that close-knit Expos community that continues to today.
Well, that's easy in this regard. It goes right back to the very beginning of the franchise, because that was a long time ago, as you know, over a half a century ago when it all started in 1969. But there were as many as 8 or 10. I've forgotten. I'd have to sit down and write down names to add it up. Expos players after the 69 season that remained in Montreal with their families and had rented apartments and or homes out on the West Island for the most part in Montreal and Beaconsfield area, and they stayed there that first winter that the club was in town. So the business of a family-oriented organization started even as the team began on the field in 1969. And those players that remained and stayed and spent the winter, they got involved in the community one way or another. They played some basketball games. They played, actually, several of them strapped on skates and went out on the ice and played some hockey, some pickup hockey games. So right out of the chute, back in 1969 into the winter of 69-70, the Expos were family in Montreal.
Dave, spring training is supposed to be coming up. I know there's a labor stoppage right now in baseball, and we may lose a little bit of the season. Who knows how that's going to end up? But what's next for you? How will you enjoy the baseball season this year when it finally does start?
Well, I kind of have to feel my way through that, and I say that because of this. If you throw in the 3 years that I broadcast minor league baseball, I broadcast in the International League in Richmond, Virginia, when the Braves had moved their AAA club to Richmond. And I did the Richmond Braves games in 1966, 67, and 68. And so you add those three to the 53 years in the major leagues, and that's 56 summers that were taken up with baseball in my life. So it's been 56 years since I've had a summer, and I'll see how it goes, because there will obviously be a period of adjustment.
Do you have a favorite call, a favorite broadcast call from your years in Montreal that you remember, the on-air moment that you remember the most?
Actually, no. I think I think of it more as the body of work, but I know that fans really took to the work that Ken Singleton and I did on that Dennis Martinez game in Los Angeles, the perfect game. And I know that at the end of that game, that's been replayed a lot, and fans kind of took to that El Presidente, El Perfecto. That was good, but I never really broadcast games looking to create highlights. So I can't quote you games and things that I said about the game or the outcome of the game because I tried to describe what was going on at the time, and when that ball game was over, I moved on to the next, and so it's really difficult for me to pick out any one moment. But having said that, there was a 16-year period, Elias, right between 1979, starting in 1979, and running through what was left of the 1994 season. In that 16-year period, the Montreal Expos won more games than any other National League team. And that period of time really stands out in my mind, as it does, I'm sure, in the minds of the fans.
Dave, before we wrap up here, and right on cue, I have listeners sending me notes about your voice and how much you were the soundtrack to their lives here. But I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about the home run call, up, and away. If you could tell us where that came from, and if you could give our listeners, some of them really, they're pining for it, Dave. Give us one of them. I'd love it.
Yeah, well, that all came from the fact that I was driving home one night from Jarry Park, and I've forgotten the year, but it was within the first 3-4 years. I was driving home from Jarry Park, listening to a replay of highlights from the game, and I noticed how it was one of those games where there were several home runs, and both Russ Taylor, my beloved partner in those early years, Russ Taylor and I said, we don't sound alike, but we're saying pretty much the same thing on all these home run calls. I should come up with something different. When the highlight portion of that program was over, I switched over to one of the rock stations, and I was listening, and along came Marilyn McCoo and Billy McDaniel, and here comes the song, Up, and Away. And I listened to that, and I started singing along with it in the car by myself. Of course, I wouldn't do it in front of other people. But I started to sing Up, and Away, and I said, maybe I'll try that as a home run call. And so I did. I don't know if it was the next night or the next opportunity. I gave it a try, and there were a couple of home runs in that game, and I tried that. And when the game was over and for the next couple of days, I didn't hear a thing about it. And I thought, well, I'll just drop that. Nobody picked up on that. And John McHale came up to me after a game and said, I didn't hear Up, and Away on the home run by so-and-so. And I said, well, I didn't know that anybody would like that. He said, I want you to go back to it and use it.
Oh,
and
wow.
I did.
I love that. Dave, we have to leave it there. I want to thank you so much for coming on the program, reminiscing. Our listeners are loving hearing your voice, and I wish you the best in the next chapter of life.
I enjoyed it. Pick up the phone and call me anytime you want to, Elias.
Dave Van Horne, legendary Expos play-by-play voice for over 3 decades.